I was reminded this week why I started recording poems and literature and sharing them online. I was doing some testing on a campus this week and was invited to pop into one of the English classes. They're studying poetry, and each student got to pick a poem from a list of poems that they are going to memorize and recite to the class. The teacher is a very dear friend of mine, and she invited me to come in and share a couple of poems in each class. So in between testing sessions, I popped into each classroom and got the opportunity to share my love and passion for poetry with the students, explain what poetry did for me in my life and how I was inspired both by literature and by learning how to express my thoughts and feelings in writing. When I looked at the list of poems the students could choose from, several of them were my favorites, and in different classes I tried to read the room and share the poems that I thought that class might appreciate, or ask for volunteers of who wants me to read their poem. So I shared Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, and tried to talk a little bit about her background and the building passion in the poem and what it means based upon who she is and the things that she experienced in her life. In one class, I talked about Jabberwocky and Lewis Carroll and how the syntax and the structure of that poem allows us to look at nonsense words and still find the narrative and understand the meaning. And I flailed about around the room trying to demonstrate to them what the nonsense words meant. And would you believe they understood the poem, even though half the poem is made up of nonsense words. I shared Shakespeare's Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? And we talked about the power of Shakespeare and the enduring legacy and why he's still important. And we talked about how he immortalized his lover in the words of that poem. Unbeknownst to them, he was going to be one of the most important writers of all of history. And so 500 years later, we're still talking about this woman's beauty, her literal hotness, because he's comparing her to a summer's day. I shared one class wanted me to read Casey at the Bat. And so I tried to read it as dramatically as possible, making a bit of a fool of myself, but all in the name of trying to inspire someone to love poetry. We looked at the first several lines of Annabel Lee and talked about how Edgar Allan Poe grew up watching his mom portray Juliet. And so he saw his mom die and come back to life and die and come back to life every night sitting on the front row. And then when she died of tuberculosis in the back of the theater, she was coughing and coughing. And whenever she died, he said she looked more beautiful in her death because she was at peace. And we talked about how that experience in his childhood impacted his literature and how he writes about women and death and beauty. But in every single class, I shared the poem If. I told the students that this poem has spoken to me in different seasons of my life in different ways. That every section of this poem, every couple of lines, hits me in a different way at a different season of my life. This has been my favorite poem for about 25 years. In each class, I also told them that sometimes I get emotional when I read this poem, and I ask them to be respectful if I do, because they need to see that men can have emotions. And some of the classes, as I've read the poem, I would stop every couple of lines and explain it. Sometimes I would read through the whole poem and then discuss it at the end. And to break this down just a little bit, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, have you ever been in a situation where everyone's freaking out, everybody's losing their mind, and fingers are being pointed, accusations are being made? Can you stay calm? Can you keep your chill? Can you be level-headed, even when they're saying it's your fault? Even a dog can fight. All of us can react and scream and holler. But can you stay calm, hold your head up high with dignity, know what the truth is? If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. Have you ever been called worthless? Have you ever been called stupid or ugly or fat or old or a mistake or worthless? If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you. And as I said to the students the other day, if an adult has ever called you those things, I want to apologize. You're not worthless. You're not stupid. You're not ugly. You're not fat. You're not a mistake. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, and make allowance for their doubting too. If everyone's calling you a jerk, it is okay to take pause and stop and think, why is everyone calling me a jerk? What am I doing that's making everyone call me a jerk? Now, if upon that reflection you just realize they're all being mean and it's not true, then hold your head up high with dignity. But make allowance for their doubting too, and try to see, is there some truth in it, and is there some ways to grow? If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, patience is hard. Or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating. If you are constantly dishing out what people are giving you, that's not character. That's not dignity. But if you can stand tall with your head up high while people are lying about you and hating on you, and not return that hate with hate, and not return those lies with lies. And yet, don't look too good or talk too wise. Don't get too cocky. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, we've all got to have goals. We all have to have dreams. We have to have ambitions, but you have to live in the now in order to get to those goals, in order to accomplish those dreams. So you can't just focus so much on the future that you can't live in the now. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat these two imposters just the same, this 2-line part of this poem has been with me really hard lately. This is the piece that has spoken very poignantly to me, to the point that I got these words on my arm to carry them with me. We can't live in triumph. We can't live in disaster. They're both imposters. Life happens in the middle. If you live your life only finding fulfillment when you are winning, only if you make the team, only if you're completely successful, only if you're riding those endorphins in a high, you can't live your whole life pursuing that, because you're never going to be fulfilled. If you live your life wallowing into the depths of despair and depression, that's an imposter. That's not where life is. We do bottom out. We do reach the mountaintops, but we've got to find peace and solace in that in-between space. Triumph and disaster are both imposters. Celebrate when it's time to celebrate. Cry and grieve and mourn when it's time to grieve and mourn. But that's not where we live. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools. People are misquoting you. People are saying you said something when you didn't say it. And you hold your head up high, even whenever they're using it against you and trapping people with it. Or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. Has the sandcastle you've been working on for years been kicked over? Are you able to bend down and keep making that sandcastle, or do you just give up and walk away? You know, in my mid-40s now, there are things in life that I've invested years, decades in, that have crumbled. And sometimes, count your losses, you bend down, start working on it again. You can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. Can you risk it all? Every now and then in life, we risk it all. We put it all, we bet it all, we gamble it all. And sometimes when we do that, we lose. Love is a risk. Education is a risk. Career moves are a risk. Moving can be a risk. Making big financial decisions, making big familial decisions or friendship decisions, those can all be risks. And sometimes we lose it all. But sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes we win. And here's the hard part, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. Can you keep fighting when everything in you tells you to quit? 2 people in my family that are my heroes, my sister-in-law and my father-in-law. Those 2 people, life has thrown them so many blows. I don't understand how they keep going. And yet they do it with grace and dignity and passion and love and joy. Can you keep fighting when everything in you tells you to quit? If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. If you can hang out, if you can be popular, if you can be with the in crowd, you can be with lots of people, you can be looked up to and admired, but you don't become cocky and proud and haughty. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, can you protect your heart? Even when, not just when your enemies turn on you, but even when your loved ones turn on you. If all men count with you, but none too much. So people don't allow people to be dependent upon you. Don't be in an imbalanced, unhealthy relationship. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, live your life to the fullest. You don't get any of these seconds back. You don't get any of these minutes back. Live every minute as 60 seconds and live every hour as 60 minutes. Live the day, seize the day, take advantage of every opportunity that you get. Yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son, or a woman, my daughter. So I love this poem. When I taught seniors, I would have seniors get out a blank sheet of paper on the first day of school. I would read this poem to them, and then I would ask them to just write. I would give them 5 minutes, just write whatever comes to mind, whatever feelings, whatever thoughts, whatever emotions, whatever reflections. Even if you're writing, this is dumb, this is stupid, why am I having to do this? But you have to write for 5 minutes straight about what you think about this poem or what this poem inspired you to think about. Don't worry about spelling or punctuation or grammar. And then I would collect those papers and put them in a filing cabinet. And then at the end of the year on the last day of school, I would do the same thing. Get out a blank sheet of paper. I would read the poem and have them write 5 minutes. And then I would hand back the papers from the first day of school. And we would look and see how much they've grown in that 1 year and what they're looking forward to as they're projecting into college, career, military, or the next phase of their life. So anyways, I leave the poem If by Rudyard Kipling.